Good afternoon, guys. Welcome along. We're seeing some people joining into the meeting at the moment, so we'll just give it one more minute before we get started. So we do appreciate your time to join on this webinar. Okay, so I think we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Wesley. I'm one of the cybersecurity solution architects here at Ingram Micro. Presenting with me today is Ronald Gange from ESET, who is a senior pre-sales engineer at ESET as well. Also on the call, we do have Mateen Ebrahimi, who's the channel sales manager from ESET. So if there's any sales related questions, you can definitely reach out to him. At Ingram Michael, we also have Carmelo Aslanidis, who is the ESET vendor business manager as well from our side. So if there's anything that you as a partner require from us, you feel free to reach out from a sales perspective to Carmelo or Matin after this call as well. So today we're going to be talking about the Essential 8 and cybersecurity together with ESET. The agenda for today that we're going to be going through. The webinar is going to be about 40 minutes or so, so we do understand it's straight after lunch as well from here. And the agenda will be just going through initially just a bit of a high level overview of the ASD Essential 8. We do realize that a lot of customers have been asking our partners around Essential 8 what they need to do around here. Then I'm going to give it over to Ronald, and talk about how ESET and how they work with Essential 8 as well. As part of that Essential 8 conversation, another part that comes to partners in mind as well is around cyber insurance as well. So Ronald and ESET is going to give a view of what you guys need to do and look for in cyber insurance, and then afterwards we're going to follow up with some next steps after this webinar across on here. So in terms of that is ASD Essential 8, I'm sure it's been a topic that some customers of yours would have raised up. But if you have not heard of it, don't worry about that. So what we're going to do is just going to give you a brief introduction into just a high-level overview of what the ASD Essential 8 is. But so back in February 2017, the Australian Signal Directorate revised their long-standing strategies for organisations to mitigate the cybersecurity incidents. And its model is to ensure that mitigation strategies evolve with the tactics and techniques that the hackers are using or cyber adversaries that are out there. The latest iteration of this and the update of the ASD Essential 8 was back in November 2023, last year. So there is constant updates that do happen with this ASD Essential 8. Now, if you're looking at the ASD Essential 8, it's been designed to protect organizations' internet-connected information technology and networks. The principles behind it can be applied to either, for organizations with mobility and operational technology networks as well. It's not designed for such purposes and alternative mitigation strategies, but it's more an appropriate way to defend against unique cyber threats to your environments out there. Now, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre strategies to mitigate cybersecurity is a priority list of practical actions that organisations and partners can take to make their environments much more secure. The advantage of this guidance is that it is customizable to each organizations based on their risk and profile and the threats that they are most concerned about. It looks at ensuring that critical information systems are secure and safeguarding your organization's reputation and resources. Now, whilst no single mitigation strategy is guaranteed to prevent a cybersecurity incident, it should be used serve as a baseline for your cybersecurity posture to prevent and minimize any sort of cyber incident in an organization. Organizations can look to the following with the essential 8, and there are a few here. So managing your risks that are contextually relevant for your customers, and providing steps that are relevant in mitigating those threats for those organizations, and helping support organizations with a baseline to achieve the essential 8 model in itself on there. So to assist the organizations and partners and customers alike in protecting themselves, have the Australian Cybersecurity Centre has developed a 3-tier maturity model of the essential 8. So, and I'll talk about that in a couple of slides from maturity level 0 to maturity level 3 on there. Now, if we look at the ASD Essential 8, it can be broken out down to 3 different components. The first component we're looking at is preventative measures. All right, so these preventative measures are going to reduce your attack surface, as well as the number of cybersecurity incidents that may occur in your customer's environment. Layering preventive measures accounts for exceptions and gaps in a layer, and short windows of time where one layer is able to be defeated. There is never a 100% way to secure an environment or be immune to a cybersecurity incident or a breach that can out there. So it's that eventually of when it may happen, but minimizing those risks and exposures of when that might happen across on there. Of course, the next step we're looking at is to try and, if an attack does happen, we want to try and mitigate or limit the extent of that attack happening out there. So on the right-hand side, we're looking at restricting admin privileges, patching operating systems, and multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication has now been single-handedly messaged out there constantly, day in, day out. We're looking at cyber threat actors. Essentially, they can buy logins. They can log in now without having to break in or things like that across on there. The last one here that we see in this stack is the recovery of the data and system availability. So we're talking about trying to prevent and minimizing those risks and exposure. If the event does happen, okay, let's try and limit what they can do or the damage they can do. However, there may be things that fall through the crack, and eventually, if everything breaks loose, we want to try and be able to recover that data and system as quickly as possible to get you back online from there. So if it's always the prevention is always better than the cure itself. If the cure or the or the cyber threat has taken full advantage, you want to be able to get back and restore as quickly as possible with the recovery of systems out there. Now, the 8 itself, obviously, I've broken it down to those 3 in itself on there. A lot of the things we, looking from application control, it's designed to prevent any sort of malicious code or applications that are running in your environments. You want to only allow what those applications are doing on there. Patching. It's a critical thing that you need to look into your environments, making sure that whatever vulnerabilities that applications or operating systems have, you want to make sure that you want to have a patch in place as soon as possible if there are things that are critical or extreme risk that can compromise a system's environment. The next one around macro settings, obviously it's designed around sort of in a Microsoft environment. One of the common attack vectors that cyber threat actors have is that they use macros that can contain malicious codes within those Office documents that you have across on there, and that can provide attackers access to sensitive information out there. Application hardening, it's slightly different from application control that we have the top up there, but it's looking at focusing on applications that interact with content from the web. And basically, this strategy limits the capabilities of malicious content looking to evade application control itself on there. By limiting the extent of attacks, we're looking at also restricting of your admin privileges. Admin privileges are the keys to your kingdom. So by limiting that access to those administrative privilege accounts, making sure that you're regularly reevaluating and validating the need for those such privileges out there. Patching operating systems as well, similar to patching applications. We want to make sure that vulnerabilities are, patched and up to date. And the ASD sort of requires up to within 48 hours for a level 3. However, making sure you're using the latest operating systems with the least amount of vulnerabilities on there. I have customers that have still using Windows XP these days. For whatever applications. They're not supported. However, there's cyber threat actors will look at and try and exploit those type of systems that are out there. So making sure you're always up to date. Multi-factor authentication, obviously to use in case as a second form of authentication. We talk about the 3 things with authentication. What do you know? What do you have? And who are you? All right. So a lot of us use our biometrics, fingerprints, or Face ID, for example, as a second form of authentication out there. Lastly is the backups, right? So we want to make sure that your backups are critical. Back up your critical data and systems and configs daily on a good basis there. Part of that backup as well is to run a disaster recovery plan as well. Have that disaster recovery. You don't want to find out if everything's gone broken the day you have to do your backups aren't working as well. So that's one of those things that you have to constantly run and check with your customers on there. So that X-ray signal directorates also talk about the maturity levels of Essential 8. Now the Essential 8 strategies are built into 4 levels and advises organizations to actively align with the Essential 8 by selecting a target level based on 2 things. First of all, it's the importance of the data and the organization you are protecting. Secondly is the capability and the determination of threat actors that will likely target that information across on here. Organization, if it's a very small customer, you are not going to try and achieve maturity level 3. It's horses for courses, depending on your customers and your requirements out there. Now, basically, it's to assist organizations from a level 0, which will say, yes, okay, we've identified that there are risks involved. However, we haven't taken the steps. These are very good for partners to take that next step or conversation with that customer on what they need to do from there. So don't be afraid if it's a level 0 that you have on your maturity level. Usually the level 0 and these are very simple tools and techniques and tactics and procedures that cyber versers can easily get into an environment without any a very minimal security protection in place on there. So depending on the overall capability, malicious actors may exhibit different levels of tradecrafts, for different organizations and against different targets as well. For example, malicious actors capable of advanced tradecraft may use it against one target, while a basic tradecraft at the top that will be used against the broader organization. So as such, you should consider what level of tradecraft and targets that these cyber threat actors are using to gain to try and breach into your customers across on there. Now, in terms of maturity level 3, it doesn't guarantee a stop to any malicious actors out there that are willing and have the capability and time and investment to try and attack an individual per se. Their tools and techniques are very much very customized and very unique in itself, and they're generally tools that aren't usually available on the dark web or things that dark markets that are out there across in general out there. So what I'll do is I'll pass it over to Ronald, who will now talk about ESET and what they do with Essential 8.
Thanks so much, Wesley. Thanks for that introduction and a really good explanation about Essential 8 and how it's come about. And I think one of the things that I would say in our approach to Essential 8, especially with what we've heard from our partners and the end users as well, is that Essential 8 itself is a good start in being able to prevent those most common types of threats, but also the way that that it needs to be approached is that, one, it is a good start it is limited in some ways, like you mentioned, Wesley, where it focuses really on a Windows environment, which isn't always the case, but that can also be adapted. The same type of controls can also be adapted across different types of platforms. And I think that that's one of the positive things that it can be used for. And in terms of ESET, what we do provide are various types of technologies and different types of technologies that allow you to be able to meet those control requirements for the Essential 8. So I might jump to the next slide now and just go back to the why this is so prevalent and so important nowadays. Now, especially since the advent of COVID, of the last 4 years or so, there's been a great rise in the number of attacks, and especially to a lot of large and institutional companies within Australia. And because of that, we can think about the Medibank breach of 2022 and the Optus breach of the same year, and the kind of effect that that's had within the industry, and also in terms of the average cost of data breach. So just in the last 5 years, there's been a 32% growth in terms of the average cost of a data breach, and is now up to 4.03 million as per Ponemon. Now, if we just have a look at Optus itself, their breach in 2022, they've got $4 million worth just in government fines, over $140 million worth in cybercrime related expenses and recovery, and untold, possibly billions, based on third-party and class action lawsuits based on people who've lost business, as well as customers who've lost personal data. So we're talking huge numbers here. If we look at Latitude Financial, its data breach affected over 328,000 customers and cost over $76 million. So just thinking about the average cost of data breach and the kind of numbers we're talking about, firstly, because these have been successful, cyber threat actors, of course, are encouraged or have the motivation to be able to continue attacks or increase their attacks. So this is our current threat landscape that we're in post-COVID. I'll get you to jump to the next slide, please, Wesley. So in our cyber threat landscape, the different things that we've learned over the last, especially over the last 2 years, is that in terms of this attack, ransomware is still a major type of attack that is affecting many businesses, from small to medium businesses up to enterprises. With the advent of hybrid work environments and people working from home, what we found is the perimeter of threats for an organization now extend beyond the network and go into the employees' homes and wherever it is that they're working and accessing the internet. And with that, because there's been great increases in cyber insurance claims, as well as ransomware, extortion, different types of financial losses, cyber insurance is no longer a given. In the past, cyber insurance was offered as a ride-on or as an additional to business insurance, and you would get cyber insurance really on the cheap. They say it's like, would you like fries with that? It's that easy to be able to obtain it. And now, because of the rise in the risks, it's not as easy to obtain it. And not only that, is that the premiums and costs for cyber risk insurance or being able to obtain it has increased exponentially in the last 3 years. Now, there are good things that have been happening in terms of the government's involvement and also in terms of the focus of building cybersecurity awareness, as well as the ability to be able to recover from cyber attacks. And this has been shown in terms of legislations, as well as the work of the ACSC and the ASD. And part of that is the initiative of the Essential 8. There's been increase in that. And also because of that, what we find is many of our partners and their end users are now approaching us with questions about How are we able to meet these requirements? How are we able to improve our cyber risk posture? Things that before were kind of more rare, or it was more likely before that that decision makers and organizations were really in denial that they that they had possible risks of financial loss in their organization. Now, also with compromised credentials being easily available on the dark web and being used for targeted as well as AI-based attacks, it's more and more important to be able to have that additional protection when it comes to authentication in your environment. And this is where 2FA and Zero Trust come in. Not to mention, not just that, but especially nowadays in terms of the geopolitical conflicts that are happening, there are heightened cyber threats worldwide, not just in Europe, not just in Asia, but affecting Australia, the US, and countries all over the world. And many times there are different threat actors that may also have sponsorship or support from nation state governments. Seeking to gain advantage. So with that, there's an increased or heightened awareness as well as heightened risk in terms of cyber threats, especially to companies that work with government organizations or are working with critical infrastructure. So that's the bad news. Now, in terms of ESET, where we see ourselves is really providing different structures and different products and technologies to be able to address multiple threat vectors. And so because of that, we've developed multiple layers of threat protection. So ESET is not just an antivirus, but is able to detect and protect against different types of threats, especially the most prevalent type of threats that are being used to attack companies now. In terms of dealing with the problems of the extended work environment, ESET not only secures the endpoints within an environment, but wherever it is, because it provides that additional protection against network-based attacks. It also provides security over cloud-based systems. Since we find many of our partners and their customers are moving towards Office 365 and Google Workspace, we need to ensure that we can protect those platforms against the types of threats that they will be facing, including malware, including phishing, as well as spam and other types of threats related to that. Now, with those different levels of protection, ESET is able to help you align with standards such as Essential 8, which we're talking about today, ISO 27001, as well as different requirements for that you may have in terms of compliance, as well as governance requirements. So for companies that need to meet GDPR requirements and similar, ESET is able to align those using the technologies we have. And ESET has been partnering with government bodies worldwide, including Europe. ESET is the largest cybersecurity provider in Europe and is one of the most trusted. And we partner with organizations such as the CISA and Australia's ACSC. Part of the technology ESET also has that we include as a part of our security bundles is the ability to be able to protect your Windows RDP, VPN, and the login to your Windows workstations with a second factor of authentication. Because really a username and password is not enough, especially given all the compromises that have compromised accounts that there are and the reuse of passwords that often happens in the business environment. Again, globally and worldwide, ESET is at the forefront of threat research and intelligence, and we work with the largest corporations worldwide to be able to prevent threats from being exploited. Can I get you to jump to the next slide, please, Wesley? Just a brief about who ESET is, and in case you may not have known, ESET has been around for over 30 years in the cybersecurity market. And during that time, ESET is a private company. we have been able to develop our own technology. We haven't grown through acquisition of other companies, but we've developed our own technology over the last 30 years. And we're a leader in innovation and research, especially when it comes to threat intelligence. So ESET is still owned by the same founders, and we've been growing year on year. And so over that time, over the last 30 years, we've been able to develop our technology stack to something that is award-winning and that is strong in its ability to be able to detect and protect against threats like viruses, zero-day threats, advanced threats, as well as being able to cover the breadth of attack vectors, especially within an organization. Get you to jump to the next page, Wesley. Just going very quickly as what's included within even just our endpoint security stack. It includes multiple layers of protection and detection that it enables you to prevent against different threat vectors and different layers of attacks. You know, this includes attacks against the network, attacks against phishing, as well as different exploits against commonly known and vulnerable applications as well. So with the ability to be able to detect and protect against those, ESET is able to cover off the majority of the threat vectors that most companies are able to encounter. I'll get you to move to the next page, please, Wes. So just going through, ESET has different subscription tiers or different layers of protection that our customers are able to take up, starting from a modern endpoint security with detection based on both AI and human threat research and server security. Now, our advanced feature or our advanced product adds to that mobile threat defense, both for Android and iOS platforms. Advanced threat defense, which is protection against zero-day malware. So never before detected malware is able to be stopped, detected, and blocked from ESET. And the way that it works is that we have a cloud-based sandboxing technology so that applications, so if you imagine ransomware as a service actors, they would be creating new variants of threats to be able to new variants of threats to be able to slip detection and protection. Now, any variants or any applications that have are suspicious or have zero reputation would be blocked at the outset, sent to the cloud sandbox, and observed for malicious behavior. And so within seconds, we'd be able to make a detection as to whether a zero-day or an unknown threat is actually malware or not. And this will be blocked. And this allows you or protects you from being patient zero, and also allows you to be protected as a part of a herd immunity of the ESET protected devices throughout the world. And that numbers in almost 1 billion devices worldwide. Now, our next product or our next subscription tier adds to those things the ability to be able to protect you against cloud-based threats on Office 365 as well as Google Workspace. So these are the two most common platforms that companies use. So if you have customers that use Office 365 or Google Workspace, or if you yourselves use them, we're able to protect that layer against different types of malware, phishing, as well as spam and other threats. Now, one of our newest features is something that's actually quite helpful when we're talking about things that we need to be able to do with Essential 8, and that is our vulnerability and patch management. As ESET is able to get telemetry on the different types of applications that are running within your environment as well as your customers' environments, we're able to map and correlate against CVEs and known vulnerabilities, and then be able to run automatic patching of the applications that are registered, that we have access to. And our last product, ESET Protect Elite, adds to that detection and response capabilities. So the ability to be able to get a detection of any threat actors who may be living off the land, who may be using non-malicious software to try to escalate their privileges. The different type of attacks, their TTPs, their tactics, their techniques and procedures, we're able to detect these using our ESET Inspect product, as well as two-factor authentication over Windows as well as web applications. So I just wanted to go through the breadth of the different products that we offer. And now just jumping back to Essential 8 and how we're able to help you align with Essential 8. So if we have a look at the 8 different main controls of Essential 8, based on the different packages or different subscription tiers that ESET has, we're able to assist you with between 3 to 6 out of the 8 of those Essential 8 controls. So of course, how you use it and how it configures will help you to be able to determine the maturity level that you have in Essential 8. And it would be disingenuous for me to say that we're able to cover off on all the threats. That's not how the Essential 8 was designed. But what we are able to do is that we have the products and the technologies to be able to help you to tick those different requirements that you will have for those different control areas. So just with regards to that, with those type of risks that we talked about earlier, one of the other main drivers that many of our partners and our customers have been talking to us about has been the need for cyber risk insurance. And just jumping to the next page, we understand that just in the last year, the cost of last few years, the cost of cybercrime has been increasing quite exponentially. And this is just a figure of the projected costs for cybercrime heading into 2028. Statistically, over the last 5 years, cyber risk insurance have grown exponentially, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. And with that, many companies now are underinsured or don't even have cyber risk insurance. In Australia, this is still something that's growing. But because of the rise in cyber risk insurance premiums, there's the meteoric rise of it. It's been harder to be able to obtain cyber risk insurance. To be able to reduce the costs, what cyber risk insurance companies have been doing is that they've been doing their own due diligence, ensuring that before a company is able to obtain cyber risk insurance, there needs to be testing and proof that they have controls in place to be able to have a reduction or mitigation in risk. I'll get you to jump to the next page, please. So just as a view of how things look like in Australia, in APAC, there's been a 12% increase in the number of claims just in early 2023. And there's been a 75 increase in the severity of those claims in terms of the severity of damage as well as the financial cost to the companies. So APAC as a region is the fastest growing market for cyber insurance with growth of 51%. But it's still among the smallest markets and still the most underserved. And at this stage, in terms of insurance providers, only 50% of insurers have standalone cyber insurance offerings. And between 50 to 70% of companies who have insurance have a standalone cyber insurance policy. And so why do people get cyber risk insurance, or what is covered as a part of their cyber insurance policies? So cyber insurance doesn't just cover the recovery from a cyber breach or a data breach or ransomware, but it also now focuses on doing assessments of the security posture of the organization, and also ensures that that the companies that cyber risk insurance companies have are pre-vetted or have been ensured that they have they've minimized their risks in terms of doing third-party business with them. In terms of assistance, they provide, when there is an attack, they provide assistance with forensic investigators and legal services. I think the largest cost at the moment is to do with the legal services that companies require when they incur or when they have a cyber breach. Breach notification, credit monitoring, access to call center services for companies that have been breached. There are going to be many. There's going to be many inquiries with regards to their customers as to whether their information has been breached, and this is one of the areas that has been growing in terms of cost, as well as PR and crisis management. In terms of operations, cyber risk insurance is able to assist companies in meeting the costs to get the business back up and running and operational, able to pay for the loss of revenue or income, and the cost incurred to be able to restore data where data is lost. Cyber risk insurance also, it's not mentioned here, but most good cyber risk insurance policies also covers the payment of the ransom. I know that's quite a question at the moment as to whether this is something that is good to do, but it's good to know that this is something that is still covered in good cyber risk insurance policies in case there is no alternative for that. But then again, the focus is on the prevention. The focus is now tending towards increasing the prevention rather than just paying the ransom. In terms of liability and legal costs and damages to third parties, so if they get class action suits and different types of lawsuits arising from their breach, this is also something that is covered in cyber risk insurance policy. So as you can see, those things are quite important for a business to be able to keep running, especially with the likes of with the breaches that we've seen with Optus as well as Medibank Private. Now, there are different things that may not be covered as a part of insurance, potential loss of future profits, also the loss of credibility of the company when they've had a cyber breach, the loss of intellectual property value once that is released to the public, also the improvement or the increase of the cybersecurity post the incident, which is something that's quite important, as well as in some policies, socially engineered financial fraud is also not covered. And the other thing that's not included in this slide that also usually is not covered are acts of God and also cyber warfare. So if it's like a government-based attack, it's something that won't be covered in cyber risk insurance. Now, if you are considering, if you or your end users, your customers are considering cyber risk insurance, nowadays there are different questions that are going to be asked of you, and some of those key questions that are going to be asked is that: do you have multi-factor authentication protecting your logins? Do you have endpoint security that is up to date and that's able to protect against advanced threats? Do you have endpoint detection and response, EDR? Do you have protection over your email systems against phishing, spear phishing, whaling, and spam, those type of risks? And are you providing sufficient cybersecurity awareness training to users? So those are the main or the key questions that are often asked by cyber risk insurers of people who are wanting to obtain a policy from them. And ESET is able to get you to tick all those particular boxes. And so how does ESET help you improve your cybersecurity posture in total? We help you protect against the threats over different threat vectors, including zero-day malware, network-based attacks, and exploitation of vulnerabilities. We're able to help you meet the control objectives of major standards, including ISO 27001, Essential 8, and as well as other frameworks. And we also help you meet the requirements for cyber risk insurance. So in those ways, we're happy to be able to work with you to help you have this conversation with your end users who are very much concerned about compliance with Essential 8, as well as being able to have the right answers to be able to meet the requirements for cyber risk insurance. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say today, and just wanted to maybe open up. Wesley, did we receive any questions from the chat?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Yeah, we did receive some questions as well. So first question is going to be, does ESET provide some app or tools to run on a computer network? If so, can we run that using a RMM software as such?
Yep. Yes. So ESET has a platform that it's that is both a cloud-based one or an on-prem solution that will allow you to be able to install protection for all your endpoints. So it's an endpoint-based solution. So a lot of the threats that are happening at the end of the network hit your endpoints. We're also, from there, we're able to monitor the network. You can deploy that using RMM, and that we will work closely with RMMs to be able to deploy our technology. So definitely that's something that we do. Many of our partners now are moving towards an MSP model. So we also provide an MSP model that allows you to be able to provision and manage all of your customers and their environments and their security from a single pane of glass.
Okay. Next question, does ESET provide reports for any issues after a scan is run?
Yes, definitely. So we can provide reports after every scan. We will also provide reports of any detections over the different threat vectors. That those notifications can be sent directly to your customers' technical support, or to your own technical support team, so that you're able to be notified of any threats that have arisen and that have been fixed. And we can also schedule a huge variety of scheduled weekly, monthly reports that will be able to keep you updated on any threats and maybe any of the changes that are happening. So the different trends with the types of detections that we're making, it's able to inform you on a weekly, daily, or monthly basis.
Yeah. Prevalent threats for small to medium businesses that you'll see?
Yeah, I mean, small to medium businesses nowadays, the main things are still the same things that have been happening over the last few years, but probably an increase in terms of the numbers, in terms of phishing, the prevalence of ransomware, as well as the use of known software vulnerabilities. So oftentimes there'll be a vulnerability in an application that whether it's Chrome or VLC or Adobe or whatever it is, a vulnerability that will be detected and known. But the problem is, like you said earlier, patching. And oftentimes, small to medium businesses don't have the capacity to be able to detect or know about what vulnerabilities they have. They can't be reading the CVEs all the time. And so what ESET does provide is we do provide the ability to be able to automatically report on what those vulnerabilities are, as well as do an automatic patch management of those.
Okay, cool. There are two more questions which sort of been covered on our next steps anyway. So first of all is what are the ESET costs and cost models? So we'll answer that on how to do that on the next actions there. And then part of that is there's a question around, can we use ESET on demand? For example, a client wishes to do an Essential 8 audit as well. So I think the next steps will sort of answer that across on here. So what I'll do is I'm just cautious of time at the moment. So I'm just going to talk about the next steps that everyone here on the webinar can take. So what we're doing is ESET is offering a $25 Uber Eats voucher if you come and register yourself and just book in a demo with ESET and have a talk and see the capabilities of what ESET have across on here. So if you have a sales or quote question or pricing as well, there is the QR code that you see here. If you scan that on your phone, after the webinar as well, we'll be sending a flyer with this QR code as well. We ask you if you can do it now, it'll be great if you can do that. Or if you try and do this within a week as well, you need to scan this QR code across on here. So within that booking of that QR code and putting just booking in a time, ESET will work with you, book in a time, just go through a demo as well. And during that demo, you can be eligible for a $25 Uber Eats voucher whilst they're presenting that across on here. So do please go ahead and scan that QR code. We'll also send the flyers out after this meeting as well for this promotion. And then it's only valid probably until end of June by the looks of things, for the next 30 days. If you sit down with ESET to go through the demo on here. So
And
just make
also,
sure, yep.
Just a warning, that's the availability is for the first 25 bookings and for the first 25 to complete the demo. So those are the requirements for that.
Yeah, if you do have a direct sales question as well, Matin's email and phone number is on the presentation over here. Also, Camilo's email address is down below, or you can actually reach out to them on Teams if you want to as well, on their email address. But however, we ask you, just to do the scan the QR code, put in your details, and then you can have a talk directly with ESET on what next steps or opportunities that you may have across on here. So I want to appreciate everyone's time and say thank you to everyone. I know it is straight after lunch as well, so sometimes the food coma does set in after having a lunch. But hopefully, you did find this session useful and informative, and giving you some food for thought, or some opportunity to think about with your customers on how you can improve their cybersecurity posture, and be more confident around the Essential 8 on what it's trying to do, or if you're having that cyber insurance talk as well, right? So, these days I've got a saying, there are 4 things guaranteed in life. So you got life, death, and taxes, and now cybersecurity is the 4th one that's critical, in my saying these days. So appreciate everyone's time. Hopefully you found it informative. Any last words, Ronald, that you want to have to the audience?
No, just thank you again for joining us, and I hope it's been worth your while. I look forward to speaking with you soon.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate your time.